Hey everybody, it's Ellen Lewis from Crazy for You. I am so happy you are here tonight. It is a pleasure to see you. So, what's been going on? Tell me, everybody. Um, what I wanted to talk about in this particular episode of the podcast is knitting from your stash. So, over the past couple weeks in the newsletter, I've been talking about, clearing out your stash. And we talked about going through and sort of finding those things that sparked joy and, getting rid of or, blessing somebody else with the ones that don't spark joy. So, um, and let me just talk a little bit about that whole process. Clearly there's going to be stuff that you have in your stash that it's just like leftover, or you never liked it in the first place, or you're not sure why you bought it, or you bought it before you really knew the difference between great yarn and maybe craft store yarn or whatever. I'm not dissing craft store yarn. I'm just saying that, sometimes when we move on from one kind of knitting to maybe garment knitting, the kind of yarns that we can afford or the kind of yarns that we prefer have changed. So sometimes there's stuff in your stash and you're just hanging on to it and you don't know why. So the idea was to sort of clear all that stuff out. And what you're left with is the stuff that really does spark joy. And you don't have to have a reason for that, right? You don't have to know why. It makes you happy and you're really glad that you have it. When you see it, you're like, oh yes, I love this. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I love it and I want to keep it. So that's part of what I'm talking about in terms of looking at stash and stash knitting projects tonight. Let me further clarify it to say that if you have a sweater quantity or a project quantity of yarn that is identified for a project or not, that's not really necessarily what I'm talking about. So, like, I have a ton of projects all lined up. I have the right yarn, I have the pattern, I have it in a large quantity. That's like a sweater quantity. I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about the stuff that we kind of really struggle with, the leftover bits of this project. Maybe we have 3/4 of a ball of this, or maybe we saw this beautiful yarn at Sheep and Wool or at some other fiber festival, and we just bought it because it's gorgeous, but we don't really know what to do with it, or we maybe don't have a plan for it. So that's the kind of stash that I'm talking about, what to do with, because I think that's the hardest to manage. What do you think? Tell me in the comments if that's something that you have an issue with or that you have a bunch of those in. So, hey, Carolyn, nice to see you. Hi, Barbara. Hi, Gail. Hi, Norma. Hey, Rita. Good to have you guys. So all of you who are have commented so far. I've been knitting a decent amount of time, and I know you must end up with a bunch of yarn like that. So is this something that you struggle with, or something that you don't care? You're just glad to have those little bits, or what? So I'd be interested in hearing. Hi, Eveline. Okay, so what I wanted to do is to kind of go through what I talked about in the newsletter a little bit, what to do with those things that I am considering real stash. Okay, the little bits and bobs that you love. There's too much to kind of toss, but maybe not enough to do a whole full-blown project with. So let's talk about those. So first of all, obviously you can make small things. There are dozens of patterns out there for mittens and headbands and fingerless mitts and all kinds of things, that you can make with one skein or two. One skein of fingering weight yarn is going to make a shawlette. And I remember maybe a decade ago when that first term came out, shawlette, it was sort of defined as something that you could make with one skein. It was really small. There were a couple patterns. One of them was called, I think, 100 Yards of Heaven or whatever. So those kinds of really small, little tiny cowls or gaiters that you can do with a single skein, they're always out there. So those are really cool. let's look at some creative ways that we can use maybe even less. You know what I'm talking about? So let's get ready. Okay, let's see what. Hey, Mary McIntyre from Ireland. What a pleasure to have you. What time is it in Ireland anyway? Rita. Yes, lots of single balls that I would like to make more than always hats. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly my point. Norma. Yep. Single skeins of beautiful yarns and lots of sock yarns left over. Yeah, absolutely. One ball. Yep. Gotcha. Okay. Bits and leftovers I just can't throw out. I get you. I hail from a very frugal family, so I totally understand where you're coming from with that. And I mean, that's what my stash is. I mean, I own a yarn store, so I don't really stash sweater quantities worth of stuff because I figure if I want to make a sweater, I'll just go and grab it from what's in the stock. It's the ones that are left over from projects. Oh my goodness, that's the worst. So yeah. Okay. Oh, Ellen, this is me. One skein impulse buys. There so many blankets. Yes, absolutely. All right. So Mary in Ireland says it's almost midnight. Well, God bless you, darling. Thank you for joining us. Do you have insomnia or are you just a night owl? But anyway, I'm really glad that you're here and I'm glad that you're watching. So thank you. All right. So let's get to it. One thing I want to talk about first, and I'll share my screen, is where am I? Okay, so one thing is making small private additions. Do you know what I mean when I say that? So, like if you have a little bit of some kind of really luxurious fiber left over, the idea of putting that inside, you know, against your skin, I think that's a really great use. So, let me share this with you. You can see, how do I want to do this? Yeah, maybe like that. Okay, so this is a project called The Snuggle is Real. And this is a really, really cute cowl. And look at what they've done here. They have this lining inside is cashmere. You know, the outside is whatever, but the inside is just this beautiful cashmere. And I think that's amazing. So this is called The Snuggle is Real. And this is a project that you could use. The other one I like is for pocket linings. This is the Coconuts Emma version C, which is the cardigan with pockets. And look how she's done this contrast fabric inside. You could absolutely use some beautiful contrasting yarn and make a pocket lining like that inside with, with a brilliant flash of something or a multicolor. You know how sometimes you'll see a, a dress or something that has just this beautiful contrasting lining. I think that's a great way to use a beautiful yarn. Here's the idea that I'm talking about. So a collar lining. I think Rita, who's on the podcast here tonight, did this. She did a beautiful red trim inside on her lining. Yes, my dog is telling us that my husband is home. So bear with me. I apologize. Anyway, isn't this pretty? This is a project called Moon Pulls. And what she's done is she's taken this luxurious bit that she has only a tiny bit of and put it on the inside of her collar. I think if I were going to do this, I might make it stockinette and put a turning ridge in there. But yeah, having that luxurious bit just on the inside of your collar, I think would be absolutely gorgeous. So let's see. Small hidden additions. That's what I call these. You could also, if you had mittens and you wanted to do like the inside of the cuff, do a turned hem on that mitten, that would be super cute to have, that little flash of some other color in there on the cuff, or even on a hat. If you did a turned brim, to do a different color in there, I think just looks so smart and fun. Okay, so the next one is making, so those are what I call small hidden editions. Small public editions, I think, are great also. So what do I mean by that? So this is a jacket that a lot of us did as a knit along in the shop. It's called No Plain Jane. And what they've done here is they've just made one single stripe of black at the top of that pocket, which I think looks wonderful. You could also make the whole entire lining of that pocket black or some other color that contrasts, just like I'm saying. That would be a little bit of a public and a private edition of something. So you can see that over there. I think that's really, really cute. Um, Consider just like casting on. This is worked all in one piece. So what if you were to just cast on with that contrast color and then work it at the top of your pocket? Wouldn't that be cute? I think that would be very, very smart indeed. Hi, Gwen. Nice to see you. So here's another example of a small public edition. So this is basically they've used stripes, but what if you were just to do the I-cord bind off here in a contrasting color and then get the buttons that matched just that little bit of trim? They've used a lot here because they have the stripes available, but you could do this like just at the border of your trim here. Just do the I-cord bind off, and you wouldn't need more than, half a skein to do that. I think that would be super fun. Hi, Susan. So this is called Polly, and I think that's a really cute pattern. I think this is Isabel, either Isabel or Heidi Kermeyer. Somebody tell me her name real quick. Okay, so that's one that I think is really cute. Here's another one. Just a little bit of trim. If you had mostly one thing and then you just wanted to take that one skein of yarn, or not even a whole skein, and you wanted to add that in just to give it a little splash. I think that's very cute. And she's done it here. She's cast on and then repeated that up at the top. So you can just give yourself a tiny little bit and use up that yarn that's just not quite enough to do anything with, but way too nice and too much of to just toss. Do you know what I mean, Karen? So that would be absolutely kind of your deal on that. So I think that's really cute. And there are lots and lots of options for this. You could put a little bit at the cuff. And then this one I think is knit top down. So, you cast on up here and you work a little bit. And then if you have any left over, you work it at the hem. And then maybe if you still have any left over, you can put it at the trim. And then you are not having anything left over there. So Jal says, I'm planning on adding a small contrast color at the hem and sleeve. Oh, I love that, of her next custom fit. Very, very nice. I think that's going to be beautiful, Jal. Tell us what colors you're going to use. I think also we were talking about this in the membership site. Norma is doing a sweater, and she was concerned that she wouldn't have enough of the yarn that she's selected. So she did a provisional cast on and is going to go back. And if she needs to do something in a contrast that will go in that and also look beautiful. All right, so what else have we got? Okay, so this is another example. This is a seamless yoke sweater. If you're familiar with Elizabeth Zimmerman, this is just a classic one. You don't need to have very much yarn to make this little addition. And what if this, against this gray sweater, if this were just some vibrant multi yarn that you had, and you could just use up the half a skein that you had left in there to make that beautiful little trim. Or let's say you have two colors that you want to use and you just want to add a little bit of a multi in there. I love this because this is for a little one, and you can see that you just would need just the tiniest bit. They call this in Great Britain, they have the most wonderful term. They call it oddments, oddments. So those little bits and bobs that you have left over, putting them in a yoke. And right here, if you didn't have enough of the one color, the fact that it's color work is going to break it up, and you can use as many different colors as you absolutely like. So, jowls, the gray felted tweed, and we'll do the contrast in orange. Oh, that will be so cute, won't it? Oh my goodness, I love that so much. All right, so this is a seamless yoke sweater worked from the bottom up. I think Elizabeth Zimmerman's yoke sweaters are worked from the bottom up. So that's cute. And here's another example. It's the same pattern, but look how she's taken that little bit of the blue. It looks like maybe this is a hand spun that she's using, and she's put it around the cuffs and the hem. And then she put her own little design in there for the yoke and did a little bit at the neckline. Doesn't that just make it pop? I think it's so cute. Love that. All right. So this is another fun example. This is called 3-in-1. And you have all of these little extras. And I can't imagine that any of these is more than half a skein or maybe a single skein. And it looks like you're wearing a 3-piece thing. So it's got this little Henley, and you've got the trim there. But isn't that cute? And you could use so much stash for this. And this bit that you use here, you can make that as large or as small as you like. You know, how many of you like that? I think this is super cute. Tell me in the comments if you like that one. All right. So those are small public editions. Let's talk about large public editions like color block and so forth. Okay, so this one's called Funky Grandpa, which I think is super cute. Look how they have a different color for the sleeves, but they've tied it together with the stripes in there at the sleeve and everything. And all of these could be different bits of yarn that you have lying around in your stash. This is one of my favorites. I think this is so adorable. And you don't have to do these regular stripes. It doesn't have to match. Look at this one where you have the striping, the stripe intervals are different here. I mean, you could really go crazy with the stripes like that. Simple stripes are always a good way to work stash yarn into a garment. So that's really cute. This one's called Tulips for Women, and this was originally designed for a Dream and Color yarn. Look at what they've done. This is something I'll talk about later on, but you can see that at the join where the colors are, they've done what I call a blending stitch. It's really not anything more than seed stitch, but when you have seed stitch at the join, it kind of makes those colors work together better. So it doesn't look quite so harsh. So this is a cute one, worked in one piece, raglan. Very cute. I love this one too. I think this is great. This is, if you're not a fan of stripes, sometimes it's nice to have the stripes go in the opposite direction. Really, really cute. This one's called Tin Roof. This is the pattern that the designer put out, which I think is very pretty. But I especially love these two done by another raveler. I've linked her here so you can see. But look how effective it is. She has 3 different colors here in the vertical color block section, and then this contrasting color at the bottom, but she's tied that contrast color in by putting tiny strips of it in between her mains here. So that's a very, very smart way to make the color blocks, which are clearly stash, look cohesive and I think more organized and pulled together. I guess that's what cohesive means, doesn't it? Okay, that's called Tin Roof. Super cute. And this would make a nice, if you had summer yarns, this would make a nice summer sweater if you were doing cotton, or if you were doing wool, that would make a beautiful vest. Just a kind of little pop over. Love that. Simple stripes are always gorgeous. This simple stripe obviously is Andrea Mowry. Jenna did a Joji Locatelli sweater, and she used a similar kind of stripe concept, the stripes of a given width, very regular, work top down. If you're not a fan of stripes, but you still want to do an easy way to get those things to blend, use skinny stripes. So when you use really, really skinny stripes like this, it doesn't read as stripes. Do you know what I mean? It kind of reads more as sort of an overall landscape of fabric, which I think is great. Very pretty. Okay, this is a wider stripe, very cute. I wish I could remember Isabel's last name. Heidi Kermeyer and Isabel. Somebody tell me in the comments. I know you know who I mean. Isabel Kramer. Yeah, okay, thank you. So super cute, wide stripes where you want them, pockets or no pockets. But again, you probably have some leftover yarn. You could do it with tweed or whatever. Use all the yarns. Okay, so let's talk about this. So these things that we've been looking at have been kind of where you have very clearly definite color block, or you little bits that you're adding to a sweater. But sometimes you want to use all the yarns, right? And you want to make a whole sweater with all of the yarns carried together, or just make them all work in a very blended way. And the truth is that you can approach any pattern with what Chris Bilsma used to call stash, which meant just pulling whatever you had that would work at that gauge and just using it, right? Just knitting it. We did this wonderful class that was incredibly empowering, where you took all of your yarns and you just wound them around, and then you tied them together end to end, and you just knit those in this kind of skinny stripe landscape. So that's one way to kind of approach using your stash in a garment. But let's look at some of the other designs that are kind of geared to using all of your stash so that you don't have to kind of think about that. You know what I'm talking about? So yes. Thank you, Lisa. Yes, Isabel Kramer. Okie doke. So it's important, I think, to use blending techniques sometimes if you are worried about your palette looking cohesive. So I think this is one of the most gorgeous designs that I have seen lately for using stash. This is called the Sea Glass Sweater. Positively stunning. And what she has done is worked this stranded one stitch, one stitch, one stitch, one stitch. So one stitch in one color, one stitch in the next color, and back and forth all the way around. She's only ever using 2 colors in a row. So it's super easy, Fair Isle concept. But she's changing the colors that she's using at will, carrying them up the side. I think this is absolutely beautiful. Oh my gosh. And doesn't she just look so happy? And then what she's done is she's used a single kind of yarn that in a color that works with her overall palette for the collar and cuffs. You could do that if you wanted, or you could simply make stripes that were not stranded. That's the kind of thing that Brandon Mabley was talking about at the retreat, not having the cuff be quite such a stark contrast to the multiple colors, but using a stripe palette in there. Thank you to my pups for letting me know that I am at home. Oh, thank you for bearing with me. Text me and tell me if you have a dog that does this to you. Okay, so I think that's really cute. Here are some other examples of it. This is a really cute example where it is cropped and a short sleeve. Here's another one, long sleeve. And here's a close-up where you can just see how that's worked. I love that so much. All right. So this is another one. This is Stephen West, and this is an example of mosaic. So when you have multiple colors that you're trying to use, using mosaic knitting, which is a slip stitch, it helps to blend the colors. So mosaic and mosaic and corrugated ribbing. So again, one knit one, purl one, but in alternate colors. So yep, very cute. Yeah, 2 dogs. That lets us know lots of things. I hope they're good things. Yes. I just have to tell myself, I love my dogs. I love my dogs. I love my dogs. Okay, so if you're using multiple colors and different yarns throughout, there are other ways other than color work to blend your colors together. Um, so blending stitches. So moss stitch, seed stitch, reverse stockinette, and half linen stitch are all stitches that give you knits and purls on both sides of your fabric. And when that happens, you end up with the 2 rows of the different colors really blending together. So it looks more cohesive and it makes it easier for you to get those colors blended. Okay, so here's an example of a sweater Stephen West designed, the amazing Technicolor Dream sweater. And he's used lots and lots of colors, and he's carried 2 yarns throughout. Additionally, he has used a moss stitch or a seed stitch in here to blend not only the colors that are carried together, but in this color shift. So do you see what I'm saying here? How it softens the shift from one color to the next. And here he's used again, or she has, I think this is not in the original pattern, but she added a little bit of brioche in the same palette, which I think looks really, really nice. This is a fun one that's worked, again, vertically if you're not a big fan of horizontal stripes. Reverse stockinette is also a stitch that blends the colors together. Again, he has used 2 different colors in the same, held them together, and working in reverse stockinette, you get that little bit of a hazy joined feel. Carrying yarns together is always a nice way to use stash. And she's got, I think for this one, this is a bulky sweater. She's carrying 3 or 4 fingering weight yarns together. You could carry a DK and a fingering. You could carry the 4 fingerings. You can really do whatever you want. So fun. Another thing you can do if you are trying to use your stash is to work large or small areas in your stash yarns, but carry a blending yarn throughout. This one is called Barcode. It's by Chris Bilsma, and she's carrying a strand of cobweb weight lace hand-dyed yarn throughout, and she's got multiple yarns here. So these are all fingering weight yarns in dozens of different colors that she had just left over from this and that, but she's got that single strand of lace weight silk. You could absolutely use a single strand of lace weight mohair in a solid color or a hand-dyed or multicolor, and that would be absolutely beautiful. And what it does is it gives consistency to the yarn palette that you have. All right, what else? So I think one of the things that makes the designs look the best, and I think in pulling the examples that I've done for this presentation, it looks best when you have a little bit of a cohesive palette. So rather than just grabbing random skeins of your stash yarn, if you're trying to use a lot of them, either carrying them together or working them within the same piece of fabric, either in seed stitch or even in stockinette, it helps to have a little bit of a cohesive palette. So don't try to put all the yarns together. I mean, you could, but what we're looking for here is something that looks like something you'd want to wear and that you're proud of, rather than something that's as playful and scrappy as you might put in a scarf or a hat or something like that. Do you get what I mean? So let's talk about choosing a palette. So choosing a palette is kind of interesting. I'm showing here, it's nice to have an inspiration piece. For this, I used this Chinese porcelain, and I pulled yarn together that were in that piece of porcelain. When we were at the retreat, do you remember we used art? I had impressionist postcards and everybody picked. And so working from something like an inspiration piece, I think is super helpful. When people were doing the sea glass, you can see that they pulled their yarns for sea glass and they brought it together in a palette that was pleasing to them. I love this because they've got these blues and then they've got these splashes of other color. We have different textures. I think that's going to be so, so gorgeous. Here again, we have another maybe less exuberant palette, but so beautiful. This is going to be a very calm palette of blues and soft pinks and greens. Again, another very soft palette here, which is pretty. And at the end of the day, as I always say, whatever the question is in knitting, the answer is you're going to have to swatch it and see. So she's doing this Stephen West Raglan, and she's got lots and lots of different colors, but she wasn't sure. So she did a little tiny swatch. And I think that it was totally worth doing because how pretty is that? I think that's so, so lovely. So how do we turn our stash? So here's just a picture of my stash at any given moment that I took a while ago. How do we turn this into something that we can work with? And the answer is arrange it by color rather than by gauge. So if you look at this one, you know, it looks kind of like a mess. But this one, it's so much more clear what you're working with. You know, you have your colors kind of all together and you can decide, okay, I want to make a purple one or I want to make one in shades of pink. And maybe I will grab a bit of this yellow to throw in there, or a little bit of this purple to throw in there. Or maybe I'm going to work with these two palettes, or maybe these two palettes, or maybe it's going to be all neutrals. So it's so much easier to see, you know, what you've got going on when you arrange your palette by color. So that I think is kind of a way to look at and use some of your little bits left over or your random skeins in garments. We didn't cover tonight any of the accessory patterns that are out there, because believe me, there are a million accessory patterns out there for hats and shawls and scrappy socks and blankets. I have a palette pattern for a blanket that uses scraps. It's called Entropy, and it's out there, and it tells you, you know, how to, you know, use the different yarns and how to number them and all that stuff. And it's super fun to do that. But tonight I really wanted to focus on sweaters and how to mix and blend sweaters for a garment that feels like an artistic piece. You know, does that make sense? So let me know what you think. Are you likely to use stash, and are you more likely to use a bulky gauge and carry multiple yarns together, or are you more likely to work at a worsted gauge and alternate rows, do skinny? Which ones appeal to you? So tell me. Okay, so while I'm waiting for you, I have a giveaway for tonight, and it is for my friends at West 7th Wool. And it's a beautiful skein of a variegated yarn, which would make a lovely addition to your stash. But there actually is a pattern for a little shawl that goes with it. And I want you to type in the comments stash, S-T-A-S-H. Type stash in the comments, and then I will be able to pick a winner. So yay. All right, where is that? All right. There you are. Okay. Well, this was fun. I hope you enjoyed it. I love actually knitting from stash. I love the process of gathering the palette together. To me, that is probably one of the most exciting and inspiring aspects of knitting. I don't consider myself to be an artist in any way. I can't really draw or paint or any of those kinds of things. But I'm really good with color, and I imagine that you are too. So the idea of pulling stash together and making something with it, I think is so much fun. And I also wanted to say real quick before I draw that using stash is so low risk. You don't feel like there's any danger in messing up, because it's just leftover bits. It's a low stakes game. So what I would actually, let me draw first. Okay. All right. Whoops. Actually, let me share my screen. Whoop. Lisa Grossman is our winner. Did I share? I didn't share. Okay, Lisa Grossman is our winner. I'm so sorry. Yay, everybody got in there. So excellent. All right, well, Lisa, we have something to add to your sea glass. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a challenge. Take a 30-day challenge and go to your stash, and every day for the next 30 days, do something with your stash. Maybe organize it by color. Maybe take two variegated yarns and hold them together and try knitting them in various stitch patterns. Take two yarns and work that sea glass knit one pattern. Just every day for the next 30 days, play in your stash. You're not going to mess anything up. You're not wasting anything because it's leftover extras anyway. So do that. And then I would love to see pictures or hear about your experience and whether you feel more confident playing with stripes or colors or, different patterns or carrying yarns or any of it. Just play with it and let me know. Go ahead and post in the video comments in the video afterwards how you feel about it. So on YouTube, go in and post your comments as to what you did over the 30-day challenge and how you felt about it and whether you liked it or not. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to Crazy for You on YouTube, please do that. So anyway, that's all for now. Enjoy your stash, and we'll see you next time.